And so we're trying to define what type of issues we have. This is the map of the whole area, and I'm just going to, all those little dots are based on what we call census block groups, and they're a way of getting a feel for where the 0 to 5 population is, right? The dots are randomly distributed, but they sort of represent that a little bit. The things you can start to see is you can start to see, for example, a few things that we know, which is that there's sort of an emptying out of that inner west in terms of where the kids are. The concentrations around DeSoto Bass, serious concentrations of kids up in the northwest in particular areas, and then sort of an emptying out in the heartland, right, tied to the aging of that, population, right? Things that if you've been around the city for a while, you have some familiarity with. Significant concentrations of kids in this area south of Mad River, but essentially north of, Stewart and Wayne, that whole area. And then again, this tends to be an older population, over in this area now, fewer kids. Okay, go ahead.
Can you explain what the red house is and the blue?
Oh, yes, thank you. Well, I'll do that on the individual things, but go back for a second, Robin, I should do that. Red is just where all the DPS sites are, and I've just identified their enrollments, right? And so you can see like this is River's Edge, and this is Kaiser, right? And you can see Ruskin and Cleveland, Horace Mann here, Edison, right? Bellhaven, E.J. Brown, Rosa Parks, and the H's are the high quality ODJFS sites. And so right here you're seeing these two large enrollments. You're seeing both the MVCDC at Rosa Parks and the MVCDC at Kings Highway, right? Just as examples. So if we go to those quadrants just for a second, here's that odd quadrant that I talked about, the northeast. Sometimes people are thinking of the old northeast as just the old northeast part of the city, east of the Great Miami and north of Mad River. And of course, this is Debs Bailiwick right up in here, this old part of the northeast. And fundamentally, the only thing that sits there is Kaiser, right? The one advantage is there's not huge numbers of kids up in this area now relative to the rest of the city. But you can see, right, you have this population of kids up here. This is part of the city, right? And there is nothing, those are primarily residential areas up there. And there's most of where they are going, they might be going over to, Wright State's facility, or they might be going up to facilities in Huber Heights and the Huber Heights school system too, because there's a split here between what's Mad River school systems and what's Huber Heights school systems for those families. Next one, just to talk about it. And so now this is the distribution in the southeast quadrant. And what you should sort of notice here relatively is there is simply nothing going on, right? We really have a capacity issue in the southeast area. We're sitting there with Ruskin, we're sitting there with the MVCDC Twin Towers, we're sitting there with Cleveland, Horace Mann, Kemp, right, and a few other high quality. And there's also a distortion here that I want to point out. You see these 4 high quality sites right here. We're talking Bombeck, we're talking many of you at Miami Valley Hospital, we're talking Montgomery County, many of you. What we know from our kindergarten experience surveys is that most of the kids going to those 4 centers do not come from the city. Maybe only around 25% of the kids that are at those high quality centers are kids from the city of Dayton itself. Okay, let's next. The southwest quadrant, everything south of Wolf Creek, west of the river, where you have a substantial number of kids in DeSoto Bass and the sort of populations here scattered out through Westwood. You have Hilltop, Miami Valley CDC. You have Louise Troy here. We're sitting here with Edison, Dayton Boys, just very few. Westwood, and Wow. So again, gap issues, right, in the southwest. Okay, go ahead. And now in the northwest, the reason the northwest looks like, well, it's in pretty good shape is precisely because you have this huge concentration of Head Start sites, Kings Highway, and at Rosa Parks, and then you have the whole Rosa Parks Learning Center, that is coming together, and there's a strong partnership there between the two. You have a River's Edge, which actually serves kids from all over the city. You have Dayton Christian sitting here. And now sort of notice this, right? These are city boundaries, right? I've done this clipped map thing, of city boundaries. So we do one more slide to illustrate what part of our problem is. So this is again the northwest part of the city. Here are the city boundaries, and this is the DPS boundary. And so you have 3 DPS schools, right, that are sitting there outside the city of Dayton boundary, but within the Dayton Public Schools. And part of the issues that we have, and part of the real concern with respect to county money is that there are sorts of locations, right, that it's important to serve in particular ways that are outside the city of Dayton boundaries. And this is Harrison Township and Trotwood over here, and you're talking about Valerie and Charity Early and Meadowdale, right, that are outside the city of Dayton boundaries. And we just sort of wanted to illustrate that as an additional problem. I talk rapidly because I already know what I know, so you need to tell me what you want to know.
Richard, are there
career in weatherman?
are there any parts of the city that are growing?
Well, this is an open meeting, isn't it? So you should be careful. Where we have growth is with respect to downtown. We are experiencing a certain degree of population losses in other parts of the city, but whatever seems to happen is, and while we may be experiencing population losses in those elementary school years, part of the thing that we see is we still have just about the same cohort of kids every year in that 0 to 5, coming up. That we still have lots of really young families in the city, I guess is the way I would say it. Our population loss is of a different type.
What about southeast, over in the Belmont area?
Yeah, that is a little more stable. That is a little more stable. You know what the issues are with respect to different, different particular neighborhoods up in the northwest, and we, know what's happened with respect to inner west neighborhoods.
Okay, that was really a lot.
Riveting.
But I think it helps us recognize this is a complicated situation that one size fits all is not going to fix.